first week's running of the National Championship is brought to you through the support of the following sponsors. Whether you are running in major endurance stakes or simply hunting your dog, you need the best when it comes to nutrition. Recent studies have shown that quality feed may even affect your dog's ability to find game. A pioneer in the field of animal nutrition, Eukanuba, a step above the rest. Spalding Labs. Check out our website or give us a call to learn more about the amazing fly predators. They're the natural enemy to flies, but never bother people or animals. Say goodbye to flies with fly predators, the little bugs that do a big job. Subscribe today to Cubby Rise Magazine, one of the best publications on bird dogs and quail hunting to hit the market in many years. Visit our website or call us to subscribe. RR Supplies is owned and operated by Ray Reel from Plasher, North Dakota. Ray specializes in quality, handmade tack products for the field trial and horse industry. Circle B Kennels. Located in Summerville, Tennessee, Circle B Kennels is home to the 2006 Alabama Open All-Age Champion Shadows Tennessee Girl. Check out our website or just stop by for a visit. We are located near the West Tennessee grounds. You can be sure that the Marshall Recovery System is the best, most carefully designed and engineered tracking system you will find today. Visit us at marshallradio.com. Game Maker Kennels, home to Game Maker, a proud participant in the 2008 National Championship. Tucker Saddles. With patented gel seat comfort, Tucker builds some of the finest saddles on the market today. Visit our website at tuckersaddles.com or call us for a free catalog. The weather was nearly perfect for a field trial. The winter had been cold, icy, and brutal over most of the south, but the quail population appeared to be in excellent shape, and the forecast for the next 2 weeks was calling for above normal temperatures. The early September release of quail had fared well, and for reasons only nature can explain, the wild bird population seemed to be showing a strong comeback. 41 dogs had qualified for this, the 110th running of what many feel may be the most prestigious field trial in the country, the National Championship. 20 handlers representing 48 different owners had come to compete from across the country. Their dogs had been specially prepared and conditioned for the grueling 3-hour braces that characterized the National. In the mix of 39 pointers and 2 English setters, 3 of those dogs drawn to run were defending national champions. Senior to that trio of champions was Miller's Online, having won this title in 2004. This would be Jack's 7th running in a test often considered too demanding for dogs half his age. Shell Creek Coin, the 2006 winner, had been having a great year. Coin's fans had their money on this stellar performer who would be running in his 4th national. The third member of this illustrious group of former champions was last year's winner, Whippoorwill Wild again, also back and competing in his 4th appearance. Even though conditions were nearly ideal for a field trial, for reasons unknown, the size of the gallery was smaller than in recent years. The judicial panel consisted of the same trio selected to declare a winner for the past 4 years. The junior member of this trio was Bobby McAlexander, back for his 4th assignment as a judge. Bobby hails from nearby Holly Springs, has been around bird dogs most all his life, and is well respected as a judge of major championship events. Judging in his 6th renewal was Doug Vaughn, hailing from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Doug's experience with all-age prairie-type dogs blends well with his trio. The senior member of the group is Charlie Frank Bryan. This would be Charlie's 9th assignment as a judge, but that is not the record he holds that is most impressive. Charlie has not missed riding in a single national championship for well over 50 years. No person in the entire history of this trial can surpass that record. A warm welcome and brief announcements from Dr. Rick Carlisle greeted those saddled and ready to ride that first morning. Drawn in the first brace were 2 fine dogs. LJ Confidential has been the hot derby of the season. He was recently purchased by Earl Connolly and would be handled by Steve Hurdle. Braced with LJ was Top Crude, a seasoned campaigner making his 4th bid for this title. Owned by Dr. Guthrie and Ray Black from Texas, this attractive black and white pointer is expertly handled by Alan Vincent. Both dogs showed purpose from the very beginning, taking in big slices of the country. Each dog took a different side of the Morgan crop field. At the far end, point was called for LJ, and when the judges arrived, they found Top Crude backing. Two hawks departed from the cover, causing Steve some concern. A quick flushing effort produced a single quail, and all was in order.
It ain't there, there it goes. Come back alive.
Across the Turner Road, LJ scored again with two coveys lifting for the Mannerly Derby. Crude scored in heavy bicolor just past the Turner Pines.
There goes Barrett.
Larry Huffman was scouting for Allen and found him standing tall and proud in a cut access path. Two coveys lifted from this find also. Rising temperatures seemed to shut bird finding down, so by the 2-hour mark, both handlers had elected to put their dogs in the harness, bringing an end to the morning brace. By noon, the temperatures had peaked. Sunny, almost summer-like conditions brought out plenty of riders, but they were not the conditions you hoped for in a field trial. Clower's Thunderstrike, owned by Jerry Hignite and handled by Rich Robertson, was braced with white solid Reward. Reward is owned and scouted by John Ivester and capably handled by Lefty Henry. With a tough challenge ahead of them, both dogs took the first big field far to the end. It was a better day for a trail ride than a field trial. Setting conditions had turned off early in the morning and nothing seemed to improve. It was not until the hour-and-a-half mark that both dogs were found standing on point. Handlers reported birds had left, and a relocation effort failed to locate any sleepers. By the end of the second hour, without any bird work, Richie called it a day, putting his dog in the harness. Lefty continued on running, hoping the late afternoon would improve conditions, but halfway through the third hour, Lefty also made the decision to spare his young dog the brutal grind, and the brace was over.
Nice job on the ground.
Yeah, man. Thank you, Brad. He'll be back. He's a pretty nice dog. Pretty nice dog. We got some dogs left, too.
The third brace brought two former national champions to the line together. No one in attendance could remember two national champions being drawn to compete together at this trial in recent memory. The 2008 national champion, Whippoorwill Wild Again, is owned by Dr. Terry Turlip and Dr. Jack Huffman. Developed and handled by Larry Huffman, Wild Again is a dog made for this type of trial. Shell Creek Coin, the 2006 national champion, was recently purchased by David O'Connor. Coin is handled by Steve Hurdle, who has had this dog since his early competitive days. The weather was slightly improved, with both dogs showing intelligent application from the very beginning. Wild Again was handling as if on a string, with Larry riding the course to the front, showing all the confidence in the world in his multiple champion. Coin was rimming the edges and using the wind as only an experienced dog knows how. It would pay off along the Turner Ditch with this beautiful covey find. Wild Again was digging into cover deeper for his birds and was soon found on point near the Somerville Highway. The indication was that birds had left unseen. An extensive flushing effort proved this to be the case. Wild again was putting down a strong, well-applied race, but birds were not cooperating. Coin was showing equally well, but birds were obviously not on the edges either. Coin was soon found far to the left of the course, with birds rising as the judges rode to his find. Both dogs were adjusting to the conditions and were starting to dig deeper into the cover as the brace wore on. Wild again was soon on point in the area where singles from Coin's earlier find had flown. The birds had vanished in the 30 minutes that had elapsed. With a second unproductive in the books, Larry elected to pick his dog up.
Thank you, Charlie.
Coin was zeroing in on feed strips, and at the 2-hour mark it paid off with his third find. 15 minutes later, Coin would score again across the Keegan Ditch in another feed strip. Number 4 and Coin was not done yet. A light rain was improving the conditions. Coin would score once more into his third hour on a covey near what plantation workers have always called Bird Alley. With the heart of a champion, Coin continued in his quest to find birds, finishing far to the front near National Championship Drive. It was the kind of performance that made you remember why Coin once won this title. 2 Petes were drawn to run in the 4th race on the first afternoon. One is from the West Coast and he's called Spectre Pete, owned by Herb Anderson and handled by Rich Robertson. The other was White Powder Pete, owned by Bert Wimmer and handled by Colvin Davis. Powder Pete's 10-find performance in this trial last year was fresh in the minds of many. Overcast and with the threat of more rain, it looked like it should be a good bird-finding afternoon. Colvin's White Powder dog was soon spotted on point after the first road crossing. His demeanor indicated he didn't have the full scent cone. Reading his dog properly, Colvin asked for his dog to relocate. With the mastery of a pro, Pete circled his birds, cutting off their escape, and then he had them pinned for a clean piece of bird work with excellent style. Colvin explained the incident this way.
We just come in one hole, Scott, and he got us both of them.
Bird-finding conditions did not improve. Near the 2-hour mark, White Powder Pete was found standing once again, this time birds lifted unseen by the judges. Shortly after this unproductive, both handlers had their dogs in the harness and the day was over. As is often the case, the weatherman would play an important role in the outcome of the trial. Torrential rains would hammer the plantation and delay the morning start until 9:30. When there was no let-up by that time, the morning brace was canceled, and the two dogs scheduled to run on the morning course were moved to the afternoon, making changes that would alter the running for the rest of the trial. By noon, the storm cell had passed, and the scheduled start of 1 p.m. put two fine females on the ground together. Cedar Oak Delta Dawn, owned and handled by Tom Honaker, had qualified for her first trip to the National. She was braced with Whippoorwill Firebox, owned by Earl Connolly and handled by Larry Huffman. A full litter mate to Whippoorwill Wild again, Firebox was having a spectacular season by winning a number of major trials throughout the South. The rain was gone, but the wind had picked up, and conditions were far from ideal for the dogs. Turned loose on soggy ground, both of these strong females raced to the front on a mission to find birds. 30 minutes into her hour, Firebox would use the wind and style up into a beautiful point on the far side of Cedar Hill. Larry would quickly produce a single bird with everything in perfect order. The wind was gusting to 30 miles an hour, but Firebox was making it her mission to find somewhere out of the wind to locate birds. "18 minutes into her second hour, Firebox scored on a small feeding covey in Turkey Bottom. To stay out of the wind, Firebox began to dig deeper in the cover, and Larry had to ride the edges in order to see her on point. In heavy bicolor, to the left of Cox's Ridge, Nick Thompson, who was scouting Beth, found her pointed in the notorious Reebok Covey location.
There goes the bird.
It was Beth's last find and a beautiful piece of work on a covey that often gives dogs the slip. Tom had picked his Dawn dog up early when she failed to find birds. When Beth's bird finding came to a halt at the 2.5-hour mark, Larry elected to do the same thing. By Thursday morning, the storm front had passed, the wind had died, and the temperature had dropped nearly 20 degrees. Drawn to run in this sixth brace was Whippoorwill Wizard, owned by Barney Allen and handled by Alan Vincent. Wizard's brace mate would be Miller's Southern Pride, the 9-year-old litter mate to Miller's Online, the 2004 national champion. Pride is owned by Chip McEwen and Mike Fernie and would be handled by Rick Fernie. Both dogs made bold moves to the front, Pride taking the left side and Wizard the right edge. The crisp morning temperatures must have felt good to Mike Fernie's horse that elected to treat the gallery to an early morning show. It's one way for a scout to gain attention, even if that wasn't the game plan. It is in this area that the morning course takes a hard left turn. It is a turn in the course that has claimed many dogs over the years. Wizard would fall victim to that turn and was not returned in judgment. Pride made the turn and was handling like a glove. It paid off for him as he took the left side of the field near the Turner Road. He had a big feeding covey and a small patch of beans left on the field edge. Near an old cemetery by Spencer Govan Hill, Pride scored his second find in a Milo feed strip. Pride was digging in the heavy cover, and when he failed to return in a reasonable period of time, Rick asked for the tracking equipment, bringing an end to the brace. The signal indicated what many had suspected. Pride was on point in thick cover, and we all had ridden by him. A tough break for a great old dog. The weather had warmed, and a slight breeze from the west greeted the two dogs drawn to run in the 7th brace on Thursday afternoon. Chinkapin's Andy is owned by Ted Baker and is handled by Joe Hicks. Coming off 2 big recent wins, Andy had just recently qualified for his first national championship. Tom Honecker's second entry, Cedar Oak Bee Sting, was back for her 4th bid for the title. Bee took the right edge, with Andy moving off to the left. At the far end of the first big field, Bee was standing tall and proud in the middle of a feed strip. Unable to flush her birds, Tom asked her to relocate. With precision and class, she mastered the task cutting off the running birds. Crossing the road, Andy was on point and Bee came in for a pretty back. It was an area where birds had often been seen. Today they were not home and Andy was credited with an unproductive. Bee was tearing up the country and hitting the cover. Just when you thought she might be gone, she would show up out front. Andy was also doing a great job on the ground, rimming the edges and hammering out the front end. Between the two dogs, they left little unchecked, but birds were just not cooperating. Near the end of 2 hours, Bee was found on point and she looked like she had her birds dead ahead. It was a likely looking spot, but a thorough flushing effort and relocation failed to produce any birds. Andy would point minutes later on another field edge with the same results. With 2 unproductive stands, Joe elected to put his dog in the harness, calling it quits for the day. Bee had vanished, but soon the call of point came from her scout near the top of Cox's Ridge. Tom flushed her birds and all was in order. She was standing not 30 yards from where Firebox had pinned the Reebok Cubby the day before. Showing absolutely no quit, Bee finished her 3 hours strong and to the front, dispelling any thoughts she might not be an endurance type of dog. Friday morning brought the 8th brace to the line. The temperature was comfortable and skies were overcast, but there was also an uneasy stillness that gave you a feeling birds could be hard to locate. The 2 dogs drawn to run on this morning are no strangers to the National, both having been here before and both known for their strong bird-finding talents. Black Range is owned by David O'Connor and is handled by Alan Vincent. Definitely a prairie-type dog, Range will push the limits of the country in his desire to find birds. Braced with Range was Lester Snowwatch, a young dog out of Miller's Dateline that was bred, developed, owned, and would be handled by his proud owner, Gary Lester. This would be Bud's 4th trip to the National, having qualified to run here in 2006 as a Derby. Turned loose on the morning course, Bud wanted to go to the right, but the strong voice of his owner soon had him seeking the left side of the course. Range had hung to the right side and was pulled off course when that hard left turn had to be negotiated. Bud had stayed to the left after the breakaway, and he was on course and out in front. Bud had hit the Morgan Swamp and didn't come out. Gary asked permission to send a scout out to see if he was pointed. When Bud appeared up front, Gary sent him down along the field edge near the Turner Road. When he failed to appear at the end of the field, Gary rode around the corner signaling point. Bud was seen standing along the edge of the field, almost exactly where Southern Pride had pointed birds the morning before. It was 30 minutes into his first hour, and Bud had his first find in the books. Bud was taking in big bites of country, but at the same time he was handling and staying to the front. After we crossed the upper end of the Turner ditch, Bud was crossing the far end of the field. Range, who had been missing for the last 15 minutes, was spotted off to the side and on point in a Milo feed strip. With Allen and his scout gone, Nick Thompson was dispatched to flush his birds. Reading the situation perfectly, Nick walked directly to the birds and put them in the air for the stylish pointer. For Nick, who was one of the most respected scouts on the circuit, it was a reversal of roles, but one which he played out extremely well.
Okay? I know. Just tell that boy where you want him to do things. No, you're doing a great job, bud.
During this same time frame, Bud had nailed his second find up front, which was unable to be covered by the camera. Bud had settled into a bird hunting mode as he continued to check out all the likely cover. Number 3 came for Bud into the third hour when he raced along a fence line in Bird Alley, wheeled and pointed for this perfect piece of work. Bud was showing no signs of fatigue as he rimmed one field after another. With 10 minutes left in his 3 hours, Bud threw his head into the wind and locked up on find number 4 near National Championship Drive. Turned loose from that final find, Bud showed the same drive and determination he had exhibited throughout the 3 hours. When the call of pick 'em up came, Bud was on the distant edge of the field near the morning breakaway spot. For Gary, it was the performance he had been trying to put together for 4 years. Many in the gallery knew they had witnessed something special.
Appreciate y'all coming right.
A lady who had been riding all week summed it up best.
Doesn't get any better than that. Makes me have goosebumps.
The bar had been set. Those left to run knew exactly what it would take to surpass the morning's performance. The same eerie stillness of the morning persisted. Not even small birds were moving.
Oh, for crying out loud.
The first dog paired for the afternoon running was A Mirage, owned and scouted by his proud owner, Dr. Fred Corder, and handled by Randy Downs. Oak's bracemate would be Phillips White Twist, a strong young pointer recently qualified for the National who was owned by Butch Houston and handled by Robin Gates. Both dogs took the first big field by storm, reaching the far end and swinging to the front. Twist would not be seen again, but Oak continued to put down a well-applied race. Randy had Oak handling to perfection, but birds were hard to come by. It was not until halfway into the second hour that Oak would be found pointed. Birds had moved, and it took a relocation to get them pinpointed. With 15 minutes left in his 3 hours, Oak's persistence paid off and he pinned cubby number 2 near the main road crossing. Oak wasn't done. With only 8 minutes left, he nailed cubby number 3 near the old Avent house. At the call of pickup, Oak was far to the front, heading for another feed strip, which had paid off for him in the closing minutes of his brace. A fine performance for a valiant old warrior. Saturday morning dawned clear and cool, with wind out of the west that was gusty at times. It was to be a historic day at the National. 2 setters, the only 2 in the stake, had been drawn to run together. No one could even remember that happening in the last 70 to 80 years. High Test Skyhawk has excited setter fans since his early Derby debut. His recent win of the Quail Invitational was a first for setters in the entire history of that stake. Hawk is owned by Jack and John Elliott and is handled by Ray Warren. Jim and Sherry Michelitz partnered with Dr. Barry Wynn to co-own Jet Setter, who is handled by Alan Vincent. Away at 8 a.m., these 2 fine setters were primed to put on a show for the unusually large gallery. Jet would score first in the new Pond Basin area. It was a difficult situation with gusting winds, but Jet handled things perfectly. Hawk had recently suffered a bout with Limbertail, but he was not showing the effects in the early going. Both dogs were showing strength, intelligent application, all-age patterns, and handling response. At the far end of the Turner field, both dogs were found standing with Hawk in a backing position. Unable to flush birds, Alan asked Jet to relocate, which he accomplished with precision.
Nick!
Where's Nick?
Alan's scout, Larry Huffman, had this to say.
I think we all brought pistols.
Like many of the most intelligent bird dogs, Jet had started to dig into cover when he wasn't finding birds on the edges. His third find came into his second hour when his scout found him buried in on this covey of birds.
I might need Nick here. Let it go.
It was obvious that Jet was connected to Alan, and yet his every move was in an effort to find birds. When he disappeared in the locust turn, Alan looked to where he had last seen him go and found him standing on point in a heavy milo patch. This would prove unproductive, the only blemish on an outstanding performance. Jim, Sherry, and Dr. Wynn could not have been more proud. Their dog had shown exceptional strength throughout the 3 hours and had never wavered from his mission to find birds.
Pick him up!
At the end of the brace, Alan rode to the front and found his dog hunting with the same determination he had started with 3 hours earlier.
Nice
Bird
job,
work in the
buddy.
last half of his brace would have been nice, but in this sport, you take what nature hands you. Alan knew there was nothing more that he could have asked from his dog. The gusty winds had died, it remained overcast, and the improving conditions held the promise of a good afternoon. Drawn to run in this 11th brace was Game Maker, owned and handled by Dr. Fred Corder and scouted by Randy Downs. Chip's performance here last year had gained him a host of admirers, many convinced he would have been the runner-up had that placement been awarded. Braced with Chip was House's Snakebite, Andy Doherty's money dog because of his large number of mega-purse wins. Jack has the reputation as one of the most consistent dogs on the major circuit. Both dogs were turned loose shortly after 1 o'clock, and the afternoon was underway. At the end of the first big field, Chip was seen standing on point. A large covey lifted as we rode to him, all seen by the judges with everything in perfect order. Crossing from the front and coming from a different direction, Jack wheeled and slammed into point for Andy, a beautiful, independent piece of work on one of the singles from Chip's earlier find. Chip was working the front end, leaving little unchecked on his mission to find birds. It paid off with find number 2, and Chip had not yet been down 30 minutes. Chip's style and manners were perfect, a trademark for which he has become widely known. At the far end of a long field referred to as the chute, Jack was spotted on point with Chip in a beautiful backing pose. Andy produced a large covey with both dogs exhibiting perfect manners at the flush and shot. Two to 2, and the first hour had not even ended. Using the wind, Chip swung to the right past the strawberry patch area and pointed on the far side of an island thicket. Fred produced a large covey for his Bannerly dog.
dog right out here.
Chip was working the edges and digging into cover at every opportunity. In Turkey Bottom, Chip was spotted on point in the same feed strip where Firebox had pointed birds earlier in the trial. Maybe they had lifted early, maybe they ran off, but today they were not home, and a thorough relocation failed to produce anything. While being heeled to the front, another covey lifted, and Chip spun into a mannerly stop to flush. Near Cox's Ridge, Chip was once again on point in heavy bicolor. It was an area known for birds and with the reputation of being home to the Reebok covey, known for their ability to run and escape unseen. Once again, these birds managed an escape, and a second unproductive was credited to Chip. Chip was connected to Fred, and his pattern and application was nearly perfect for the Amesian standard. Crossing the last road, Fred watered his dog and sent him on for his last half hour. Chip never varied from his mission to find birds. With 10 minutes to go, Chip pointed in a thick tangle near the Morgan Swamp. Once more he had his birds, and Fred put the tight-sitting covey to wing.
There you go.
Crossing into the last big field, Chip swung to the right, heading for the new pond basin. With only minutes left, Chip once again threw his head into the air using the wind and established a beautiful point. After covering a large area, Fred was finally able to flush the tight-sitting covey for an outstanding piece of work.
There you go. There it goes.
With only minutes to go, Chip finished in the big bottom, and at the call of pickup he was hoisted into the saddle for a well-deserved ride to the barn with his proud owner. The second week's running of the National Championship is brought to you through the support of the following sponsors. Great work by a highly trained, well-conditioned dog makes every hour in the field a rewarding one. On those wonderful days, your dog can zero in on a bird and stay motionless on point. You can just sense his intensity and readiness. Such challenging work calls for tried and trusted nutrition like Purina Pro Plan dog food, a track and field diet for leading athletes. Tri-Tronics, American-owned, American-made, the quality you and your dog deserve. Come visit us at our website at tritronics.com. Aaron Kennels is owned and operated by Sean Derrig of Illinois and is home to the Southern Justice line of dogs. Visit our website at aaronkennels.com. Field Trial Magazine. If you love bird dogs, you should be reading Field Trial Magazine. Call to subscribe today and receive a free hat. When you are in West Tennessee or North Mississippi, you owe it to yourself to schedule a hunt and a visit to Galena Plantation. Galena is part of Fitch Farms and is considered one of the country's top shooting preserves. Spending a day hunting at Galena is like a step back in time. Buddy Smith Kennels, located in Collierville, Tennessee, Buddy has set the standard when it comes to developing young dogs. Buddy is truly the master when it comes to putting on the polish and finishing touches needed to win in any major competition today. A visit to Grand Junction isn't complete until you've stopped in to see Wilson Dunn and visited Wilson D's Sporting Goods. Wilson has been supplying outdoor enthusiasts with quality gear for nearly half a century. Order the latest catalog today, or better yet, stop by and visit the store. Monday morning of the second week brought blue skies and 2 fine dogs to the line. Distant Shadow, at 4 years of age, was making his first trip to the National. Co-owned by Tom Nygaard and Jed Dempsey, Sam is handled by Robin Gates. Sam's brace mate would be the 2004 national champion, Miller's Online. Owned by Chip McEwen and Mike Fernie, Jack would be handled by Rick Fernie. Sent away on a cool, clear morning, both dogs made aggressive casts from the very beginning. Sam failed to negotiate the very difficult first turn and was lost from judgment. Jack was making strong all-age casts but still showing up out front on a regular basis. When Jack's absences became longer, Rick also asked for the tracking equipment and the brace was ended. Partly cloudy, cool, and with a slight breeze from the west, set the stage for what promised to be a fine afternoon on the second Monday. Drawn to run in this 13th brace was Survivor's Real Deal, a first-year all-age female owned, developed, and handled by Mark McLean from South Georgia. Paired with Dee was Barshoe Busy. Busy, or Pat as she is called, is owned by Tom and Don Fowler and is handled by the popular pro from Missouri, Andy Dougherty. A large gallery was gathered to watch these 2 talented females put on a show. Dee scored first at the end of the first long field where Game Maker had scored the day before. Minutes later, Dee slammed into point in the next field looking like she had birds right in front of her. Mark flushed to no avail, and Dee was credited with an unproductive. Pat was having trouble with the scenting conditions, and when she had her second unproductive in a short time frame, Andy elected to call it quits and put her in the harness. Dee was putting down a strong forward race and soon was pointed up front in the same area Snakebite had birds the day before. Conditions had turned dry and dusty, but Dee continued to hammer out the front end in her search for birds.
I was tickled to death.
Even though Dee failed to find any more birds, she finished her 3 hours with strength to spare, and Mark could not have been more proud.
Nice little dog.
It was a gray and overcast morning that greeted the 3 judges on the second Tuesday morning of the trial. Drawn to run in this 14th brace was Lester's Absolute. Owned by Rick Stallings, Rip has been a stellar performer all his life in the string of Colvin Davis. Braced with Rip was In the Shadow. Buster is owned by Carl Bowman and is handled by Robin Gates. Turned loose at 8 a.m., both dogs headed for the right side of the course but quickly changed direction with a cue of their handlers' horses. Before reaching the new pond basin, Buster was pointed with Rip backing in the same feed strip where Game Maker had his last find. Robin flushed a large feeding cubby, with both dogs mannerly to wing and shot. You soon got the feeling that with these two boyhood friends pitted together, the gallery was in for some real entertainment.
Tighten up, man.
Hell, I hate to call my front man. He back there asleep. What? Well, my front man back there asleep.
Y'all ready?
Within 10 minutes, Buster was on point again, and Rip was once more backing. It was a scene Colvin was beginning to get tired of.
Yeah. I gotta get on up there and see what's going on.
You got to, you dragging.
Yeah.
You got dragging. You got to get on your scotch. You ain't turning loose quick enough.
What's happening? Thing get loose.
You got to tighten up.
I gotta tighten up.
Each dog took opposite sides of the course as their handlers rode to the front at a pace that is expected in the National. Reaching the Turner Pines, the tables turned. This time, Rip was pointed and Buster was backing.
Yeah, I'm gonna play this, baby. Yeah, man, come on, boy. This is mine. Whatever it is.
Hell of an ending.
The matter thing. Whatever. Oh,
Got to hit him.
don't come on with your gun now. Be a sport like I was.
Give me a heavy club.
No, I ain't.
When Colvin couldn't produce birds quickly, he began to question his claiming the find. Trusting his dog, he asked for a relocation, which Rip performed with skill, nailing the running covey more than 40 yards into the heavy bicolor.
Get out of pocket again, let you get ahead of my
Both dogs were on a roll, searching the edges and digging into heavy cover. After crossing the Turner Ditch, both dogs were found pointed side by side. Both handlers flushed to no avail, and the dogs were credited with a divided unproductive. 15 minutes later, the score was even, with Robin and Buster picking up their second back and Colvin flushing a tight-sitting single for Rip.
Plenty.
believe that's the real deal.
I got to tighten my gut. Yeah, no big rush, eh?
Oh, no.
I got to tighten my thing, so I'm getting a roll now. I don't want to be under there looking up. I'm already worried about that hill.
All right. Come on, come on. You ready? Yeah, man.
Buster pointed along the pond dam in the Mary Scott Loop. Robin quickly flushed a feeding cubby. It was an unlikely place to point birds, but Robin trusted his dog.
Well, it just didn't look like no good spot. He's smarter than I am. He's smarter than I am, ain't he? Knew he hit it hard.
One thing about it, that's the first time we didn't find.
Really?
Yeah.
I get extra credit for that.
The handlers were having a great time and both dogs were doing extremely well. Rip's next find would come near the 2-hour mark, with birds lifting as we rode to him.
I got him now. I'm back with him now. And we got to tighten up now. Hell, I like stepping on them birds way back here. Well, about 3 of them, was it?
Buster was lost on point. When the distant call of point coming from the scout went unheard, Buster was brought onto the front. Rip wasn't finished. When he didn't return from a big swing to the left near the end of his 3 hours, Colvin went to look for him. This would be Rip's 4th and final cubby with only seconds left in his 3 hours. A true dug-up limb find, and a great way to end the brace. The 15th brace on the second Tuesday afternoon drew a larger than normal crowd. Running in this brace was Sir Lancelot, owned by Hoyle Eaton, Richard Tollison, and Sonny Childers. Bud, who appears to be a reincarnation of the immortal Riggins White Knight, would be handled by the renowned Hall of Famer Hoyle Eaton. Braced with Bud would be Whippoorwill Wardance. 2 years ago, Joe hit the circuit as a Derby sensation. Owned by Dr. Jack Huffman and Glenn Crutchfield, Joe is capably handled by Larry Huffman. Turned loose on the afternoon course, each dog took the first 2 big fields by storm. Joe was making bold moves, eating up large amounts of country, but was not seen much in the early going. After a lengthy absence, Larry would ask for the tracking equipment, ending Joe's bid for the title. Bud was working the edges and staying in contact with Hoyle. Bud's efforts finally paid off. As Hoyle walked to his dog, Bud's change of position indicated birds were on the move. Reading this correctly, Hoyle asked for a relocation, which Bud promptly executed. A pretty piece of work for one of the strongest bird finders on the all-age circuit today. When working the edges wasn't paying off, Bud started to dig deeper into cover. Well into his second hour, Bud was seen on point down in a deep depression in a small clearing. Hoyle and a judge dismounted and went to the dog. A lengthy flushing effort and relocation failed to produce birds. With only a single find at this point in the brace, Hoyle made the difficult decision to throw in the towel, ending the brace. The 16th brace on the second Wednesday morning brought Strut to the line. Owned by Tommy Davis and Eddie Schaller, Jake is handled by Tommy. Braced with Jake was Hey You 2 Pete, owned by Preston and Patty Trimble and handled by Alan Vincent. From the very beginning, you got the feeling that those riding were in for a real field trial show. Jake hit pay dirt, scoring first just after the first road crossing. Alan scored next near the new pond basin with Pete. Pete wheeled and pointed a tight-sitting single while being heeled to the front.
They come this way. I just see where they lit though. They come this way.
It was not a perfectly clean piece of work, but also not a fatal breach of manners. During this same time frame, Jake had a clean cubby find for Tommy.
Strut pointed and the bird started leaving when Tommy was riding up. They were good.
Jake's application was putting him everywhere birds should be. Pete was doing the same thing, rimming edges and digging into cover. In the Turner Pines, it paid off when Sean Derrick, scouting Jake, found both dogs standing. Jake had the birds and Pete was credited with a back. Pete picked up his third find, while Tommy logged a non-productive in a known covey location near Spencer Govan Hill. Jake was digging deeper into cover, and Tommy had to start riding the edges in order to see him on point. Jake was soon spotted on the edge of a feed strip near the Morgan Swamp. Pete had started digging in also. It paid off when his scout, Larry Huffman, found him buried in on these birds. It was as if Tommy had Jake on a string, sending him everywhere you thought birds could be. Sometimes the birds were home, and other times they would make a successful slip, causing the dog to be credited with an unproductive. When the race ended, Pete would tally 4 finds and 3 backs, while Jake had 5 finds with 3 unproductives. A fine afternoon for both dogs. The 17th race pitted Prairieland Pride against South's Late Night. Pride is owned by Dr. Bob Cook and is handled by Randy Anderson. South's Late Night is owned by Dr. David Dickey and handled by Rick Fernie. Pride started out with a back of his brace mate, but from that point on it was all his show. Judge Bobby Mack relates what transpired on Pride's first find, unable to be covered by the camera.
Randy's dog was down in that big part of the covey that we hadn't found since the first part of the trial. Had a good find, big covey of birds.
Thank you.
Pride's second find was also missed by the camera when he was found pointed to the left of the course. His third find came on Cox's Ridge, with birds lifting as we rode to him. Pride vanished almost immediately, and Randy looked for him for nearly 30 minutes. He was finally found on point for find number 4, only a few yards from where he'd last been seen. Judge Bobby Mack shares the details.
Randy found his dog in that big cut over there. I don't know how long he's been there, but had one bird there. Been standing there for 30, 40 minutes, I guess. Everything was in order.
Pride's performance in this race made a strong challenge to the front runners. For Randy and Dr. Cook, it had been a hectic 3 hours, but in the end, their dog had totaled 4 finds in a strong race with only 1 lengthy absence, which you could hardly fault the dog for. The 18th race had Aaron's Bad River paired with Beebe's Pike. River, or Joe as he is called, is owned and handled by Sean Derrig. Bill Bruce and Pete Ryman own Pike, who is handled by Ray Warren. Joe was a bull from the very beginning, taking the front end with a vengeance. Spotting his dog far to the front, Sean raced to his dog with his hat in the air. The birds lifted early, but were seen by the judges, putting Joe's first find in the books. Joe was on point again before the Turner Pines. This time the birds held for a pretty piece of work. Pike applied himself well, and at the hour mark he tallied his one and only find. Joe continued to push the limits, and near the end he was on point once more in a favorite cubby location. Birds somehow managed an escape, and a thorough relocation came up empty, adding a non-productive to Joe's two-find performance. The trial was coming to a close. Only 5 dogs remained to be run, and the forecasted weather did not favor good bird finding. Paired for the 19th brace was Riverton's Black Eye P, owned by Matt Coverdale and handled by Rich Robertson. P's brace mate was Lester's Dollar Bill, back for his 3rd try for the title. Bill is owned by Heather and Charles Klink and handled by Billy Wayne Morton. When the old mounting block area was reached, both of the dogs were found standing with neither appearing to be in a backing position. Both handlers flushed without success. A relocation by the 2 dogs established 2 different stands, with a single being produced for each dog. Maybe the cubby had flushed early and the dogs knew where they had flown. Only the dogs would know. Each would be credited with a single find. Dollar Bill would tally a non-productive and then be lost from judgment. P was staying with Richie and putting down a well-applied race, but the setting conditions seemed to be off and she wasn't finding birds like you would have expected. When she finally pointed in Turkey Bottom, it looked like she had them for sure. Whether the birds ran or flew, no one could know for certain, but numerous efforts to relocate them went unrewarded. When P's second unproductive occurred 15 minutes later, Richie pulled the harness from his saddle, ending her bid for the title. It was the second Friday and the very last morning of the trial. Some of the horses even seemed to sense that things were wrapping up. Drawn in this next-to-last brace was Mega Diamond, a powerful prairie-type dog owned by Bob and Serena Craig along with John Sayre. Diamond would be handled by Andy Dougherty. Braced with Diamond was Jackson's Static Line, a son of Sir Lancelot owned by Mike Jackson. Jake is handled by Steve Hurdle. Jake was in a hunting mode from the very beginning, heading for cover to the left of the morning breakaway. At the 40-minute mark, Jake's attack on the cover paid off, and he pointed this large cubby in the Turner Pines area. Reaching the Spencer Govan Hill region, Jake's hunting efforts paid off once more for his second find of the morning.
There you go.
Diamond was seen sparingly, and without any bird work by the halfway mark, he was put in the harness. Searching cover like Jake was doing can have some drawbacks. When Jake didn't appear and a lengthy search failed to find him pointed, Steve requested the tracking equipment and the brace was ended.
We got Larry over here. Come on.
Only the bye dog, Max Memphis May, remained for the final brace on the second Friday afternoon. May is owned by Phil Tomlinson and is handled by Billy Wayne Morton. The judges made the decision that since May had been drawn as a buy dog in season, she would not be given a brace mate and would run the afternoon course by herself. Reaching the first row of cedars near the old hog barns, May was quickly on point. The stand proved unproductive and not the start Billy had hoped for. May showed great handling response and excellent application, but birds just did not seem to be moving. When May carted a second unproductive point, Billy put on the harness and the field trial was over.
Yeah, Mr. Leo right there. He's the one paying the money to this.
In less than an hour, a crowd began to assemble at the Ames Manor House. As it has become a custom, Dr. Rick Carlisle thanked all the sponsors, those many people behind the scenes that make this trial possible, and especially the judges who ride long and hard to render their decision of a national champion.
Our judges for the trial, we just got through introducing them, Doug Vaughn, Bobby McAlexander, and Charlie Bryan. We appreciate them. Give them a hand.
With little hesitation, Rick made the announcement that many had predicted.
And what we've all waited for, the winner of the 2009 National Championship, Lester Snowwatch.
Go get the dog.
You clean up nice. Yes, sir.
Gary Lester became only the fourth amateur in the history of the stake to win this most coveted title. The fact that Gary had bred, developed, and ran this dog throughout his entire life is a feat that only a few others who have won this title can claim. After all the picture taking and award presentations had ended, Gary had the opportunity to reflect on all that brought him to this day and what this dog, his family, and friends have meant to him.
I'll tell you what, he's been good to me. Since this time last year, he's done lots of good jobs, I've really enjoyed him. I'll tell you what, the Lord's blessed me, let me have him. He's my buddy. He's my buddy, aren't you?
He put on a show here.
Well, about it. He's a real strong dog. You know, I'm trying to carry on the breeding Farrell Miller had going, and you know, he's a strong dog, and he's sired lots of good puppies, and we're really proud of him. I didn't see any of the other strong contenders. Of course, I was looking at the internet every night, and I was talking to people that saw him. But I knew my dog was perfect on his birds, and he was really strong. And he showed really well in the last 15 or 20 minutes. I thought he just showed real well. He's real strong to the front, and he pleased me a lot, and I'm pretty hard to please. To me, the morning course is a lot tougher course to run a dog on, and I was really pleased with him. You know, he's a lot of dog, and I have to get his mind. I have to get him in the right frame of mind for this trial. So it moves a little slower, and I can't ride as much, and the scout can't scout as much. And I worked him for off and on for 3 weeks in South Georgia. There's lots of birds, and just got his mind just calm and just on birds. I just kept him on birds. Of course, during that 3 weeks, he did go up and win the free-for-all championship. Oh, everybody wants to win the national championship. It's got a bird dog. Everybody wants to. You know, I was here, I can't remember what year it was, that Miller's True Spirit won. I scouted him when I was here.
2002.
2002, and And ever since then, I thought, I want to get back on that porch. I want to get on that porch with my dog. Well, with my dog, he knows field trials, and he knows when he's on the course and when he's not. And if he's not on the course, he'd come back to me. But where this course crosses, sometimes he's on course but the wrong one, and I'm always pretty nervous whenever those courses are crossing and he's not pretty close to me, because he can just grab the wrong one and go in there pretty deep, pretty quick. His call name's Bud, and he's my Bud. I tell you what, he's.
I was going to ask about that. There's always two schools of thought about you got to keep them out away from you. You got to keep them at arm's length, or you got to make them your Bud. And
well, he does